The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
This is Gerard with episode number 7 of Florida's Fresh Mix on the Florida Podcast Network, a random mix of Florida's freshest personalities. This episode is brought to you by our amazing equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. Please listen in.
Hey there, this is Amber, the production assistant for the Florida Podcast Network, and I'm here, as always, with your host, Gerard. And Gerard, I am so thrilled, yet again, for another great conversation, because today's guest is Bles-Chavez Bernstein, and her story is absolutely incredible. She was a nurse for decades, and then she decided to pursue her true passion by becoming a trained opera singer. Oh, and she's a published poet.
Once again, we're here talking about passion and following your dreams and finding a way to make money out of what you're passionate about. And this is another perfect example. And I feel like this is going to be kind of a repetitive thing. But she, unlike Zach Hirsch in I think it was episode 4, he found out when he was, very, very young. He knew what his gift was, and he's been exploiting it ever since. Now, Bless has known what her passion was even before the age of 17, when she was very, very young. But she never really followed it until she was much older in age. And she seems extremely happy about it. So I think it's fair for us to, show both sides of that type of story about following your passion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was telling you about her humble beginnings as an immigrant from the Philippines and how she made a very drastic pivot into the performing arts. But I don't know, I was listening back to this conversation today, and when I was editing it, I remember thinking, it's so difficult to choose what do I keep and what do I cut out, because every detail was so intentional and just so a part of who she is and her incredible story. Just so you know, listeners, she has 2 books, and they're autobiographical, I would say. One's called Without Rhyme, A Poet's Story. And then her newest book she wrote during the pandemic, actually, and she gets all into the process of what that was like. And that is called In the Typhoon's Eye. And we will have links in the show notes for you guys to go check it out. Because, yeah, this 25-minute interview scratches the surface for sure, but there's so much underneath it too.
No, and I came away with the interview, Amber, the same way that I did after the interview with Max Stryker, but for different reasons. Okay, the reason was because I felt like we should probably do a follow-up at some point, because I felt we weren't able to capture her journey, her entire journey. And I think there was a lot spiritually there to learn, and a lot from someone that's lived a life of so many experiences, following their dreams, etc., that could be taught to the youth. Like you said, I think we only scratched the surface.
Yeah, and this is a very nice conversation. I'm really excited for everyone to hear it. So it is time for our sponsor shout out. Listeners, like on the last few episodes, you'll hear a major difference between Gerard's voice now.
Here's my voice now again.
And Gerard's voice in the interview, which we recorded weeks ago. And I'm again using the same model of microphone that Gerard used for his interview with Bless. So I'm sure you can already tell the difference between the sound quality in my mic and Gerard's brand new Shure MV7, provided by our equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. The quality of sound from the Shure MV7 is absolutely fantastic, and you'll hear how much better Gerard's sound quality has been now and the rest of the show compared to the actual interview. All right, the time has come. Let's get right into Gerard's conversation with Bles-Chavez Bernstein.
Hello, Bless. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing exceptionally well. I'm really, really looking forward to this. Where exactly are you physically located right now?
Right now, I'm here in Frankfurt, Germany.
Okay.
So
Excellent.
it's a beautiful place. Yes.
So let's just dive right in with your beginnings. I'm curious because my sister and I, our parents were immigrants from Haiti, and you came at the age of 22, so you were basically raised in the Philippines, and I would imagine there must have been somewhat of a culture shock when you arrived in America. What was that like, and what did you have to adapt to the most?
Oh my. First of all, at 22, looking back now that I'm in my early 60s.
Oh, really?
I feel like,
I
yes.
would never guess.
I felt now looking back that 22, it's like my mentality and my emotional maturity was around 17, maybe 18 compared to the generation today. I was very naive. I already got my degree in nursing at the time, but the most difficult part of the culture shock for me was the external attitude and demeanors of Americans, my coworkers, and the vernacular English.
Right.
Yes, and I was always nervous. I wouldn't understand completely the doctor's orders, especially when they were dictating them to me on the phone.
Right. I've lived in Europe twice. And one thing that I learned pretty quickly is the more you deal with Europeans, the more Americans, we are the weird ones in a way. I mean, everybody else has more of a laid back attitude, and Americans are like, we're the best. And if you're not like us, we're going to make fun of you. And the way you're doing it is wrong. And whereas we're really the weird ones in that way. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine how that might have been a tough transition for you, at least at first, but obviously you adapted. And you were a nurse for how long?
Oh my goodness. If I counted it exactly, including the last 9 years of me working remotely as a consultant, I would say 44 years.
Wow. I knew it was long. I didn't realize it was that long.
It was that long. Okay.
So you've become a success in your own right doing what you love. So you don't necessarily need to practice nursing, I would think, unless you actually have some sort of passion for that as well. You specialize in mental health and addiction, is that correct?
Yes, that was the field where I stayed the longest, and the one where I considered it my niche in the field of nursing. When I was 21, my first job in Manila took me to work in a psychiatric unit. The patients there were like chronically and severely psychotic, constantly pacing up and down the halls and hallucinating. If you just watch them at a distance, they were just in their own worlds, not really responsive to our interaction with them, meaning us, the staff. So they were mostly controlled by medications and regular schedule of electroconvulsive therapy. One day, I brought my guitar with me, okay? Because every time I had a chance, I brought my guitar to the unit, and there was a chance where we just gathered around and we invited the patients, sit on the chairs, and I sang to them, a few times, and I noticed that the responses were totally different. They stayed put in their chairs, and they actually responded to the music, the magic of music. So I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I can find a niche for myself, in the field of nursing, since I'm already in the middle of it and I'm doing it. I didn't choose to really study nursing. It was foisted to me by my parents when they pinned all their hopes for a better life on me, being the eldest.
Isn't that the typical, immigrant story, which comes from a place of tremendous love and tremendous trust, to send your kid to a foreign land? Did you come by yourself?
Yes. I remember I had $25 in my pocket.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue into trying to understand in this short interview the breadth of your journey from being a nurse and coming basically for economic reasons to transitioning that into how to combine that with your true passion, because now you're in a totally different place as a successful poet, writer, and opera singer. And you have an amazing voice, by the way. I listened to you sing Ave Maria, and I heard you in Miss Saigon. So I saw a little bit of your acting there. It was very, very impressive.
In YouTube?
On YouTube.
Where did you go?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, wow.
I went,
I didn't know that.
You have a YouTube channel.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Yes. So,
Thank you.
I did my research, and what a lovely voice. How did that transition go from doing it part-time to doing it as a profession?
Well, there was a tragic event in my life as a young wife and mother. That was maybe 25 or 26 years ago. We were living in, actually in North Miami now. My first husband was diagnosed of an aggressive cancer. After a year of chemotherapy, he didn't make it. So he passed away.
So sorry to hear that.
And yes, my kids were very young. One was 13. My oldest was 14, my son. And my youngest one was not even 9 years old. So I became a widow at 39, actually. That's when I guess I didn't know at the time, but it was a huge turning point in my life. Maybe when my two older kids started college, I found myself being alone. And somehow my childhood dreams, my lifelong passion, just sneaked up on me. And I just decided I'm going to take voice lessons. I told myself. So I enrolled in a private music institute. It's just called the Performers Music Institute, which is in Miami. I found an excellent voice teacher there, and I heard about him before I enrolled in his school. And his name is Oscar Diaz.
Okay.
After 4 years of vocal training, I was a very diligent student, by the way.
I can see the results.
Well, I was working full-time as a nurse and taking care of my 3 children as a single parent. I was happy doing it, but 4 years doing that, there was something missing, I thought. I wasn't really 100% satisfied. What I wanted to do is to be able to understand and read music. So that's when I dropped everything. When I say drop everything, that meant I resigned. I gave up my job, an excellent job where I was director of nursing in a 250 residential facility. I gave that up. I looked for a job where I could work at night shift, so that I could go to school during the day, because it was a very rigorous program in opera studies and vocal performance major. I decided to pursue a degree in music at the New World School of the Arts.
You made the leap. You dove headfirst into your passion.
I just jumped into it, and
Right.
I didn't think too much about it. So I prepared for the audition. It was like, I think, 5 professors, and I didn't think too much about it because I was thinking at the back of my mind, I said, just for the experience of auditioning, that's already a plus for me. And I could not believe it. The letter came about 2 to 3 weeks later, and I was accepted, and I was given a scholarship on top of it. 2002. That's when I was admitted to the program, and I was already, I think, 42 or 43 years old at the time. So all my classmates were 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds.
Wow.
And I was having the time of my life,
Yeah, well, you've described it as the highest point of your life. So, and I can hear you.
It is.
I can hear the joy coming in out of your little out of your laugh there.
Oh, yes. I feel it now. It's like the same feelings of excitement again came back right now as we speak.
How did your classmates treat you?
They accepted me well. The funny thing is, on my second year of studying there, my youngest daughter, she also received a scholarship for a music degree because she has been a pianist since she was 5. So when she was accepted there, she started her first year. And there was a subject there in music where the 2 of us were classmates. So one day when that happened, I introduced her as my daughter to my classmates, and they didn't want to believe me.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't want to believe me. I said, no.
So you've obviously followed your passion with singing. I've seen the results. You're on stage completely in your own world. You can sense the respect and the reverence in the audience, even though you can't even see the audience, but you can feel it. I don't know if I probably could have pronounced this wrong, but there's a performance of you and a little girl. I think it's called P. Jesu. I'm probably saying that
Oh,
incorrectly.
Pieyesu.
Pie Jesus. Yeah, I knew I would
Yes,
butcher it.
we sang duet. Yes.
It was so lovely. And the reverence with which she looked at you and she picked up your shawl and she gave it to you, it was as if she was admiring a queen of the stage. And so, clearly you've gotten where you wanted to go there. But you didn't stop there, did you? You wrote a book of poetry. You've recently used the pandemic time to write a book that you wanted to kind of share with your family, et cetera.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me about your writing and how, aside from your music career, you delved into that?
I wrote my very first sonnet when I was 12. The literature teacher we had introduced us to the works of Shakespeare. And that was the beginning of my fascination with poetry and English language. And my teacher nagged me to keep writing. And I asked her 40 years later, when I reunited with her, I said, "Why did you keep nagging me to write?" And she told me that, "Bless, it was always there in your eyes. I could see it, that you were a poet. So that's why I gave you all those classic books to read, and I kept nagging you to write and to not stop writing."
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, I already had 3 kids. I'm in Miami. One day, I was looking around, and I thought, I have all these manuscripts. I have all these collections of poetry. Why didn't I gather them together and turn them into a collection? So as I kept doing that, it was almost like the process of writing was leading me to something better. I found out that by compiling all those poems that I wrote, that some timelines were not covered. So what I did, I aimed to write at least 100 of them, turn it into a collection, and whatever timelines were not covered, I covered it with another poetry. So my first collection, which is titled Without Rhyme, A Poet's Story, is actually a narrative of my life.
I write poetry myself, and I find
You
that,
do?
yes, I do, and I've been writing it for some time. And you just gave me a great idea, which is you compiled all your poetry together, but there are gaps, and it's probably very healing and insightful to go back to those times and then to try to relive those times and then to try to put pen to paper as how you felt back then. That must have been a very introspective journey.
Very, very introspective. I would say to you that you might probably experience this too if you do it, that the writing itself takes you on your own journey of an inward journey. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. And same feelings that you felt in those times when you were brought back to that particular event or scenario, same feelings came back to me as if they were real again.
Right. I'm assuming that your journey in writing In the Typhoon's Eye must have been somewhat similar, although maybe a little different. Did you write that during the pandemic?
Yes. So for 9 years, I've been doing remote job, right? And I'm very blessed with that. And I kept reminding myself all those years that I can never take this for granted. This is a miracle job. I mean, how many people out there who could live in different countries, different continents, and yet continue to work? And I was earning my own income. And that was very important to me. All my life, I've never depended on anyone but myself, as an adult. So it was very difficult, but the dilemma inside of me has been growing stronger and stronger. The internal conflict of who am I going to be? Should I be doing both careers, which I did for 18 years? I've been juggling 2 careers. My thoughts kept telling me, this is not right. If you want to be a true artist, you need to give your whole heart and soul into it.
Right. It's like, are you going to jump in the pool and get wet, or are you going to just dip your toe in?
Exactly. But I knew that once I gave that up, that job, I lost. Okay. I actually lost thousands of dollars of income coming to me every other week. But the end of 2019, I finally made a decision. It's a brave decision. Even my husband was questioning me about it. But I told him I'm ready. So I decided to say goodbye to my nursing career the end of 2019. So here comes 2020. I had a lot of plans, projects, live events lined up for 2020. Well, the end of February or beginning of March, we were living in Seoul, South Korea, inside an army garrison, a U.S. Army garrison.
Probably not the ideal place you wanted to be had you known there was a pandemic coming. I mean, you're laughing about it now, but I'm assuming it wasn't the most pleasant experience to be locked up there.
Exactly. But there was good and bad about it. So we were trapped inside that garrison where the housing was provided for us. All the gates, I think it's about 11 to 15 gates, everything was closed but one. We were not allowed to eat out, go out. We were not allowed to receive guests. We were not allowed to gather more than 5 or 10 people. I go to church like at least every Sunday, and all those were closed. After several weeks of that situation, I felt like there were signs of depression, looming over me. So I asked this important question to myself. What is the one good thing that isolation can offer me?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this story I had always wanted to write. So once I decided to write, I started writing every day like a crazy person, like my life depended on it. Within 6 months, I completed In the Typhoon's Eye.
You turned lemons into lemonade.
In a way, yes. Yes, I felt very rewarded. And I said, oh my gosh, I didn't waste the 6 months of social isolation.
That takes a lot of strength to do because the entire world was kind of in mourning together, in mourning for our past lives. And you turned that into something positive. And not only is it positive, but it's something that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have done it for some time or maybe not at all. And it's something you can pass down from generation to generation. It's a story about life, isn't it?
Yes, it's actually, I started it from when I was 3 years old all the way to the day when I left the Philippines. So now the readers that have read my book, all the people that read my book, some of them ask me, is there a sequel? Because now they're very curious to know, what happened to you in America? You wrote the book and ended it when you were at the airport. What happened?
Very interesting. And I'm not so sure that wasn't purposeful. Maybe very clever.
Not exactly. In fact, it was like an afterthought for me when my husband asked me, you know what? It's not really a bad idea if you continue writing another book, because I know I wrote an epilogue in order to kind of fill in the blanks, because I know some people will probably be asking me, what happened after you left? At the airport, you left for America. So I wrote a lot of pages for an epilogue.
Well, if you want my humble opinion, Beth, I think that the world deserves that book because you're a heroine in many ways. If this were a superhero movie or series, America's, what we should know about the superhero story. And then your book was In Typhoon's Eye was kind of like the origin story. So now we've got to get something about the meat of your heroic experience in America. That's just my humble opinion.
Thank you.
But your last huge solo concert was in the Philippines, correct?
Yes.
Did it feel like things had come full circle, having performed there since you had grown up there as a child?
It was really strangely profound, I would say. It's hard to describe, but what happened is that my mom, for many years, before she passed away, she has been asking me, if you've been performing and you've been singing, in other countries, overseas, here in Miami, how come you're not singing or performing in your home? My mom was very sentimental. She was very sweet. And I understood her, though. I understood her sentiment. And I told her, Mom, on the practical side, it's going to be so difficult for me. First of all, in my home city, there's not one theater. Second thing, I don't have my technical support, administrative support, like a production team.
Right.
But this is the strange thing that happened that triggered it. In 2017, my mom passed away. And in 2018, the following year, it wasn't even a year after she died, unexpectedly, I just received this surprising letter of nomination to be given an award by my alma mater. They said that I was nominated to receive an award in celebration of their 150 years of service. Another strange thing that happened, they didn't award me in the field of nursing, which I have practiced. That's where I finished my college degree in nursing. They awarded me in the field of performing arts.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
It was unbelievable. So that triggered it. And I thought the idea, as if my mom was talking to me, wherever she was, I could almost hear her voice. I told you, Bles, you need to perform in your home city. So I did the most difficult task of traveling to my home city, staying there for 3 months to prepare for the concert, recruiting a production team, and a college grad who was very smart, young millennial, who became my production manager. Now, the venue was the most difficult next step. I hired a contractor all the way from Manila, which is 10 hours drive away. I hired them to bring and haul all the equipment. So I actually built a theater. That's how I made it possible. I prayed to my mom and I said, Mom, I did it. I felt at peace after the performance.
Wow. Well, I'm 100% sure that she heard you, and I'm sure that you felt that. And, right now, this is somewhat of a timely interview because we have a lot of focus in the media on the contributions of Asian Americans to our culture and society, et cetera, and how a lot of those voices have gone unheard for so long. You've contributed so much in so many different ways through art and through your language and telling your story and sharing your truth. Do you see something positive happening now in the sea change that's occurring?
I guess I was somehow maybe shielded from being maybe discriminated against because I was with my coworkers who were my fellow nurses, and whether we were all multiracial in the workplace. But as an artist, I carved my own path. Hopefully, I won't receive a harsh treatment as a form of discrimination being an Asian American as I continue my journey as an artist.
I think that being different is what makes us special, and you've clearly capitalized on that. And at the end of the day, someone could not even know where you're from or what you look like. All they have to do is hear that voice. All they have to do is hear that voice.
True.
So on that note, do you have any events or anything else coming up that you want to promote while you're here with me on the mic?
I will be a feature cover on a local magazine here in Germany, a lifestyle magazine.
Wow, fantastic.
And they're going to print my story.
Where can people catch you on social media and follow you and learn more about you? Where should they go?
I have a Facebook page, the Singing Poet page. If they type my name, Bles-Chavez Bernstein, it will easily come up. They can Google me. I'm also on Instagram. And of course, my personal website, I wrote short stories there and essays and reflective prose. It's www.blessingingpoet.com.
Thank you so much, Bles, for joining us. I feel very blessed to have interviewed you
No,
today.
Thank you.
You're a lovely woman. I admire you. And thanks so much for the honor of this interview.
Thank you so much, Gerard. My pleasure.
Okay, take care.
Once again, another amazing interview. I think that you're probably seeing a recurring theme in our interviews with people about passion, following your passion, making a living following your passion. But this one was a little bit different because she followed her passion much later in life. But while that is a huge takeaway that I took from this interview, because I think we're going to end up talking about passion so much in our subsequent episodes, I want to talk about how she really turned lemons into lemonade during the COVID pandemic. She was randomly stuck in Seoul, Korea, while she was going to perform there, doing what she thought that her mom thought was her calling. And that's what she was doing when COVID hit. And she ended up being stuck there. Not the best situation, but she turned lemons into lemonade. And what stuck with me was she said, what is the one good thing that isolation could offer me? And she used that to write In the Typhoon's Eye. And in the Typhoon's Eye, she basically filled in the gaps of her family history between what she talked about previously in her prior works and before. And I think that her writing of In the Typhoon's Eye during the midst of a pandemic was a productive way to take tragedy and turn it into something positive. And I think that's a story for us all to learn from, which is whatever's going on in your life, there's got to be a positive side. There's got to be a way to turn it around. I have this thing that I say to myself all the time when I face adversity. For every problem, there's a solution. How can we turn lemons into lemonade? And if you think hard enough, you can figure it out. And I think Bles is a perfect example of that. That's my fresh take. And I hope that you enjoyed this latest episode of The Fresh Mix. Please continue to tune in. For details and show notes about today's show and our guest, go to freshmixpodcast.com. I'd really love your feedback, both on today's guest and on my fresh take. The Florida Podcast Network has a closed Facebook group exclusively for super fans of their shows, like Florida's Fresh Mix, and we all look forward to hanging out with you. Just search for FPN Insiders on Facebook to leave us comments. Complain about how Florida is completely flat. So anyone looking to do anything involving hills, mountains, no way. Never going to happen. And get early scoops contests and other special treats. And thank you, as always, to our equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. And be sure to visit all the great shows on Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Keep catching Who's Fresh in the Florida Mix with Florida's Fresh Mix podcast.